Data-driven storytelling, how marketing leaders leverage data to drive growth. So super exciting topic. We're going to dive into a bunch of different things. We covered a lot already about what we do, but now we're going to actually hear from experts on this topic. So I'm going to start first just by asking you, just quickly, just of course don't give us the whole life story necessarily, but just tell us your name, who you work for, what you do, a little bit about.
Yeah, sure. I'm Marianne Kuzel. I'm the EVP of Data Analytics at INRI. You may not have heard of INRI. We are a brand engagement agency offering full services in creative media and omnichannel. I have a team of data scientists and advanced analytics. I'm a big believer in predictive modeling, so it's great to hear that. I also have technologists and reporting analysts on my team. And we use data and AI to fuel that whole end-to-end marketing process, all the way from audience intelligence through activation and, of course, the measurement and optimization.
Awesome, thank you. Lynn?
Hi, my name is Lynn Duffy. I'm the Director of Research for Butler Till, which is a women-founded, still women-led, employee-owned company and a B Corp on top of it all. And we have a plethora of highly regulated industry and healthcare clients. Data is the foundation of everything I've ever done in my career, nonprofit or for-profit. I heard AI has been talked about forever. Yes, I say that all the time too. I was around before the internet. Also. So yeah, excited to talk with the panel today.
Thank you, Lynn.
I'm Corinne Casagrande. I head up the strategy, research, and planning teams at Involved Media, which is a full-service media agency, doing all the things that media agencies do.
And I'm Christine Sheehan. I'm a VP of Account Strategy at Media Associates, which is an independent media planning, buying, and analytics company based out of Sandy Hook, Connecticut. So similar to Corinne, smaller independent media shop doing all the things that media planners do.
All the good stuff. Thank you guys. Just so everyone, good, and I'll lean back so everyone can see everyone here. So let's just start by thinking, of course, over the last couple of years, things have gotten more interesting than ever before, I would say. So when you think about some of the changes of the past couple of years, and you think about where we are now, what do you think is the biggest challenge? Why don't I start with you?
Sure. So, you hear a lot about there's an overwhelming amount of data, and that's true. I think the big question is, how are organizations using that data and deriving value from that data? And we can have all the technology, machine learning, Gen AI in the world, but for a moment I want to go back to the importance of putting that human element in there, because if we don't solve certain barriers, all of that technology isn't going to do organizations a lot of good. So just to give you a few examples, we know that there's still a lot of data silos. A lot of our clients still don't have an integrated dashboard with all of their metrics from online, offline, personal, as well as the business performance, the sales and share, all in one place. Another thing is back to basics. It's a really good measurement and optimization plan. They're not very sexy, but we need to do them. And you need to be able to tie those engagement KPIs all the way up to the strategic shifts and attitudes and behaviors that you want to make and the OKRs. And the last thing I think is how do you make decisions off that data? I see clients really struggling with, I have all this data, how do I make decisions? And we actually do some training for our clients there. And to really change those things, it goes back to data culture, which sounds pretty amorphous, but like you know it when you see it, right? If you walk into a room and you've got a team of people and they all have the same facts. If you have marketers that are they have trust in the data that they see and the recommendations. If we're using data to improve our performance rather than a judgment of what you did right or wrong, those are all signs of a data culture. And so I think some of those barriers we need to overcome to really take advantage of the power of AI and Gen AI in our marketing today.
I love the concept of the data culture. I think it's really, really true. And one of the biggest barriers is making those internal sort of cultural changes. Thank you. Lynn, what about you? What do you see as the biggest challenge?
Yeah, I would echo everything that was just said, but also that analysis paralysis, I think, with the data explosion that's out there. I think it was a lot easier to do my job 25 years ago, actually, but there's so much out there distilling through, so AI technology really helps us distill down what we want to know and find those, some folks have mentioned already, super niche audiences. That's my specialty apparently, is super niche audiences. So how do you market for a disease state that only affects 65,000 people in the US every year? So we've used the technology through Resident to really have some incredible stories there.
And when you say analysis paralysis, is it a lot of time, is it internal to you, or do you feel like it's the clients that are stuck on analysis paralysis?
That's a great question. I think it can be internal sometimes with different groups within an organization working together. I get the push and pull of like, well, you research, well, what about data and analytics? It's like, yep, work hand in hand with them because that's how it has to work internally. And I would say for clients, again, heavily regulated industries we work in, so there's a lot of the PHI, PII, those conversations, and we're really leading those conversations of there's a way to do this in a smart way without that identifying information, and we're really pushing our clients in a gentle way to come and make better decisions with data, truly.
Yeah, it's a really good point that you make with the privacy and especially in regulated industries. And I think that's one of the exciting things about AI is that, as Brian was talking about, even embeddings, right, to have that type of privacy safe and secure data is really exciting to work with, and that's only going to get better, right, to help us address that. Okay, how about, do you mind sharing what you see as your challenges?
Sure. I think when it comes to challenges, it's probably we're breaking off into different branches of philosophies from clients. So you have the ones who have excellent data, who expect everything, who expect maybe too much out of AI, the ones who are all in first party and not interested in doing anything outside of their first party, and then the ones who are still kind of doing the traditional thing, the demographics that are only predicting 10 to 15%, and looking at year-over-year results, they're going to mess up their mixed model, they're going to mess up other things. So you have to first diagnose not just the situation, what's best for the client, then you have to go into what's their outlook and philosophy on life and how and marketing, and then just adjust your strategies for that, because you're not going to be able to sell them an idea that they're just philosophically as an organization not aligned with.
That's a really interesting one. I mean, I don't often think about that because when we are so on the cutting edge and we know what's possible, we have to roll back to take everybody along with us. Mm-hmm. I remember recently hearing from a cosmetics brand that had said, "Oh my gosh, I can't use age anymore in my in predictions for and I was like, okay, I'm going to go talk to my chief privacy officer, but I'm pretty sure that you can still use, there's a way. And she's like, no, governance said we can't use. And I was like, oh my gosh, she goes, what are we supposed to do? We're going to build a model that's going to predict who is a millennial and who, and I thought, oh my God, you're going to build, okay, right, and you can imagine what kind of recommendations you're going to get for skincare.
Yeah.
But you can see the dilemma. I think people don't even educating your clients about what's possible, what is legal, right, is a challenge. Thank you. Okay. How about challenges from you?
Sure. I agree with what everyone said here, but I think one of the big challenges for myself, especially coming out of this new ecosystem that we're in, is how do we use these tools that we have at our fingertips responsibly? How do we know that the insights that these tools are giving us are the correct insights, that these are the ones that are actually going to lead to something actionable for our brand? So that's where I really think, to your point earlier, this is where it's a delicate balance of using these tools as accelerators and helping us do our day-to-day job, but also bringing in that human element and sort of figuring out, what are the insights that we want to actually act on, and taking that explosion of data, as you called it, and really distilling it down into actionable but also responsible insights.
That's really one of the reasons why we built the AI Insights by Ray tool, is really the balance of what you're saying. It's like, how do we know that there's other things out there that we should be using to build these audiences. We know that there's more to discover, but yet we're going to go to the conventional places we always go. We are experts in this space. And so by leveraging AI to actually score that for you and make it more available, then the human element comes in to decide, is this really relevant for my office? Just because they're an Uber subscriber or Uber Gold does not necessarily mean that they need to be in my audience for the buying frozen pizza. Or they might actually, right? But you would have never found it, right? And so it's still that balance of using the AI to sort through that massive sum of data to find those nuggets, but then using your professional judgment, the business case, all the things that you know, what your client can tolerate to make it work. So I love that balance, but it still will be the balance. The robots are not coming in to take over yet, but not now. Okay, so let's talk about consumers. Change has been so prevalent. Anything Brian talked about, something happening in the news, really, an announcement come out, think about Roe v. Wade. As a CMO, would you have ever thought that you'd have to stand up and say where your brand was on the matter of abortion, and that customers would shop with you or not shop with you because of something? Absolutely not. It was not something we worried about 10 years ago. Consumers, though, are now subject to all this information. They see things that are happening. They're changing all the time. Just predicting how they feel about the economy, right? It's every week, right? It's changing. How do you address that? How do you explain, how do you stay ahead with shifting your strategy to address how consumers are changing and really keep your clients paced with that? Let me start with, do you mind if I
Sure,
start?
absolutely.
We'll go backwards.
So I think that the key really is to build that relationship with the consumer, right? And going beyond the click, going beyond the sale, and establishing that one-to-one connection. And in order to do that, as you said, we're in a constantly changing world right now. The world is changing, the media landscape is changing day by day, hour by hour. So I think for me, what we try to do is a data audit early and often. An insight that we found 6 months or even 3 months ago might not be relevant in today's world. So that's where these tools like AI, like Ray, can help us to do a quick analysis of the data, a quick, generative gut check, if you will, to understand if our insights are still relevant and keep ahead of the pulse check on consumers.
I think that's a great example.
I just feel like the consumer expectations are bananas for brands now. Like the AI is fueling this like hyper personalization where people feel deeply understood and seen by this like pile of linear algebra who doesn't understand them at all. And like they're expecting brands to anticipate their needs and want all these things. And from our point of view, like the best we can do is make 100 different versions of that ad to not offend you or like maybe resonate with you. And like that's where we're at versus the expectation of what consumers want. And we'll get there, but it's still a tremendous amount of work just to like, and it's so much more than we've ever done before to get to this point of being able to be right message, right person, right time. Like that's been advertising since the beginning of time. That's always our goal, right? We can finally do that, and it's not enough. Like now we want personalized messages, and there's great things that AI is enabling, like a max willingness to pay on pricing models that different big boxes and Amazon's figuring out, and like bad news for bad moms who buy school supplies the night before, like you're gonna squeeze 10x margin out of me, but like great news for retailers and brands. But from our point of view, like what can we do? We can try to serve you the right message at the right time, and that's kind of the limits of where we are right now in that value chain.
I think it's tough for brands to say too. How often should I update? Like, what am I expected to do? Do you find yourself challenged to explain to them, like, well, it can be more frequently than you expect, and it should be more? Are they open to that many versions of creative, for example, or that many segments?
Yes, I would say they're more open, and maybe this is like another discussion, but they're more open when the answer comes from a model or machine than when it comes from a human who's been doing it for decades. They like that answer better. They're more likely to believe it. Unless you have an accent, then they're like, oh yes, of course, the British head of strategy, I will take anything you have. But I do feel like that is something that we can accomplish for
So
them.
it's still human and machine is what you're saying.
Yes, exactly.
And it'd be better if the machine actually had an accent.
Right,
Okay,
yes,
all right.
always better, always
We
better.
can work that into Ray, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Okay. Lynn, how about you? How are you dealing with keeping pace with the consumer?
Yeah, I think with the consumer, it is all of those things that you mentioned, and it goes back to basics too. Like, how long have we heard right message, right time, right place, right everything? But sometimes it's going back to basics with brands and advertisers just to understand. We have to understand your audience first, and we have to understand how your audience changes. And by the way, your audience does change over time. There was some news this morning with all the traffic nonsense, but also about how in the workplace there's multiple generations now, 4, 5, possibly even 6, and
we all learn differently based on that. And so you have that on the other side with your brands as well. So how do we tell those stories? And understanding your audience will always be foundational and key. And using technology like Resonates Ray and all of the other tools within that are super helpful in understanding audience nuances and changes. I think we'll talk a little bit later, but we have incredible case studies like finding those nuggets, those tiny little nuanced changes that in a media agency at the end of the day, sometimes you're like, is that going to really make a big difference? And it makes a big difference.
Awesome.
Sure. So, I mean, it's no secret, like customer experience, and I want to go beyond what we've been saying, but it's really that customer experience and putting the customer first. It's the North Star. Consumers are demanding it. Every brand wants to get there. It's really hard to get all the way up that customer experience maturity curve. But Gen AI in combination with machine learning can really start to make that possible. And if you wanted to, as people say, you can really get to that nirvana state of marketing to that segment of one. Whether you want to do that or not, what it does do, and we use what we call predictive dynamic segmentation, so that we are able to use data and machine learning and Gen AI to come up with a manageable number of microsegments. And the layer that Gen AI adds on is being so much better at finding nuances and small patterns in the data that other methodologies might not find. And then when you take a look at all the leading MarTech platforms now, they all have Gen AI embedded in them. And so that really allows you to keep your messaging in pace with wherever that customer is on their journey. So I think the technology now and AI is there to help us get closer and closer to what the consumers want, what brands really want to deliver.
I love that. I think the thing that's super exciting for me as a lifelong marketer is that we can finally get closer to one. Like we're as close as we could possibly be because of the identity layer. And I think your question was a really good one about micro segments, right? Like the difference is in the past you would create micro segments and then there was really nothing you could do with them because there would be like 5 people in the segment. But now you can connect that to identity and you can actually know those people and take action on those micro segments, which makes it so much more powerful. It's actually the pursuit of one-to-one, right? Which is way early in my career. I remember thinking that's the holy grail. So I really appreciate you saying that. Now let's thinking about brands, and we talked a lot about consumers, but let's shift from the brand perspective. We talked a little bit about privacy. We talked a little bit about the imperative for first-party data. Brands, whether they're right or wrong in terms of what the law says, right? The pressure from the states and all the privacy is really forcing them to look hard at their own first-party data. And then what is your recommendation to them? How are you helping them as they're sort of navigating the first-party data imperative that they have? And Lynn, why don't I jump to Lynn and I'll kind of move around here. I'll give you guys, I'll skip this time.
So first-party data, again, I think I mentioned we're often leading those conversations with our clients and brands because either they think the PHI or PII is going to be too intense or whatnot, but we use actually sometimes in absence of first-party data, I think Deanna and I were talking about this the other day, but in absence of first-party data, we'll track our media tags through the Resonate platform, and that allows us to have some information. So we had an insurance client who wants more Gen Z and millennials, and they're like, we only have older generations. So we were able to track the media tags and actually show, that the media we're placing was trending, with the younger audience that they were seeking. So, even stepping into, what you could classify as first-party data to them is helpful. But then also we've been having a lot of conversations with our clients about the embeddings, as you kind of mentioned, and what we can do from that aspect to really get over their legal and compliance concerns, really. So anything we can do to remove those barriers and have completely de-identified data is really helpful to then also still push them through, and at the same time tell them, your data can be used in a very privacy-safe way, that we don't have to know anything about the person, and in that predictive way, we can really make good strides.
I think is a great point about media tags or media insights, which we're trained we can only get click-through rates and we can only get impressions. And isn't it so much more powerful when you can say, actually, we're gonna, if you do this, we can tell you. And not only can we tell you who they are, but we could also tell you how far they got in their buying journey, and we could tell you, 15,000 other things about them. And sometimes that's what it takes to open a client's eyes. So I love that story. Well, how about Christine?
Yeah, I mean, I would definitely agree with that. I do think these are all very recent conversations that we've been having. I also work across several very highly regulated verticals, so finance, healthcare, and even having a platform like Resonate or looking at your own site data or your media tags is something that's very compelling to me, because these are the kinds of verticals where clients they're nervous, about compliance, and about every single day there's a new regulation that comes out. So I think the way that we've approached these conversations, that we're working very much in partnership with our clients. So even when we're looking at data compliant partners, we're coming together and RFPing those partners together so that we come across as a unified front, and that there are no surprises when it comes to regulations.
I think that's a great way of handling it, and the partnership is really, really key.
Sure. So, in my own experience, I think there's not enough clients that are really developing zero and first-party data strategies proactively and deliberately, and so we try to work with our clients there. And it's always the question of, well, what data? There's too much data, what data? And I always try to think about data for good. So what kind of data do we want to get from our customers that's going to help them on their journey in healthcare to better outcomes, to better adherence with their medications? And it comes down a lot to putting the customer mindset first and creating a really stellar experience. So just to use an example from some other industries, most of the women in the room have probably used, when they're looking to buy a new skincare product. I was just doing this over the weekend, and it uses AI. It takes your photo and it tells you exactly what problem you have in any place on your face and what kind of treatment you need to make it better. A lot of these kinds of quizzes really work because, one, it can be kind of fun, but it's also giving you something that's really valuable. And so creating those kinds of experiences where consumers want to share the data is really important. And just to bring it to life with another example, and I know you mentioned patients with rare disease, we do a lot of that kind of work. So I'm working with a client who has 33,500 patients that we have to try to find. We can't do that without data and AI. And that patient could be treated by any number of about 15,000 physicians. And so how we use data and AI to help, first of all, we can use predictive modeling to be able to, for rare diseases, it can take 6 years to get the right diagnosis. It's a journey of misdiagnoses and referrals and treatments that don't work until you get to the right diagnosis. So we can use predictive modeling to find patients early in their journey, find who's likely to have that disease, target their physician so that they can then intervene. And then when you think about these rare disease patients, even though there's 3,500, every experience is unique. These are tough conditions to live with. And things like social determinants of health, which a lot of that we can get from Resonate, what their barriers are, what their living situation is, how it's impacting their lifestyle. We can get all of that data from Resonate. And we can have found ways, working with our wonderful partners Resonate, to be able to combine that data with other data sources, including medical claims data, and use that in a privacy compliant manner. And so now you really can take that small population and get to some actionable, manageable microsegments where you're taking them through their journey and giving them the kinds of support they're going to need to help them with this difficult lifestyle.
Awesome stories. I think, let's tell us a couple more stories. My favorite stories, data-driven stories. I'm going to start with you, Corinne. Why don't you tell us one of your favorite data-driven stories of success? So obviously it's essential, right, to make your story relatable. You obviously have a great number of stories you can choose from, but maybe there's one that you could say where you really found, data drove the difference in terms of what you were accomplishing.
Yeah, I have one that addresses both questions in the room. One, because I emailed my rep and got some custom audiences, and two, because it was like a lot of micro segments in a commodity. So it's essentially the client's D2C meat, right? Like, you're not a vegetarian, come on in. It's still D2C. Most people buy meat in a grocery store, but not in this case. So there's a whole lot of people who would buy meat for various reasons. My favorite being people have no idea what to get their fathers for Father's Day. Like, they have like, what are his hobbies? What does he like? It's like, I have no idea. Let's get him some steaks. Like, that's one of our biggest sales periods. So there's all different people buying meats. We have to create this based on the ways people are coming in through search terms, through different custom audiences, and being able to segment them. So some of these people can get on a subscription model and become really much more high value, and they have a higher cost per acquisition that you would allow because they're a customer that's worth 10x in your lifetime value. So one thing I find really helpful about Resonate is helping democratizing it for mid-market brands and these niche audiences. So these are not products and services that are in giant consumer data sets usually. They're ones that you either have to create or find a way around to get there. So that's where I found a lot of the usage for this particular me client. We segmented into 1 million different custom audiences and built different ways, the different ways people were coming in, and then assigned different budgets and values according to what it would take to get the essentially the CAC of that customer. And where we were is just a lot of it opened up a lot of different media channels to us, some much higher cost than you would think, but that's a higher customer we're going after. And some channels where, these are just people, teens or early 20s people who just never bothered to ask their father a meaningful question about what his hobbies and dreams are. So they're just buying him meat for Father's Day. So it really ran the gamut of that, but it overall returns a lot of success just by being able to find those unexpected places to be based on the individual micro niche segments and customers.
I love that. Thank you. It's a great story. How about Lynn? How about your story?
Yeah, we have many stories. One that I really like to share is using custom engaged audiences. Also, we were studying a rare disease population and both the patient and the caregiver, and using almost crawl, walk, run as the different tools within Resonate became available. So we used custom engaged audience. We put that up against Array, kind of found out certain kinds of media that resonated with this audience. It always happens, Erica. That resonated with this audience, being very particular media types, podcasts, streaming audio, really big with this audience. So we were doing some testing with the media plan and changing some things around. And come to find out, podcasts were just not really performing for us as well, even though numbers with podcasts viewership or listenership that you don't really see, hugely engaged audience, don't like advertising through podcasts though, very specifically. And so we tweaked things further using Resonate, as it continued to go further. And so we made some shifts and kind of shifted that into a test and learn of digital audio, so streaming audio kind of things, think Pandora and all of that kind of thing. And the results went bananas. I love that word. Really, and I almost want to look them up because they sound unbelievable, but it was nearly 3x factor in increase in patient conversations within a month or two of media exposure for a medically averse audience. This is a audience that's been mistreated by the medical community for many, many years, and so there is a fear of talking to your doctor, and so on almost 3x increase year over year in patient audience conversations was incredible. And then following up with doctor visits that led to the script lift for this particular brand that we were representing. And I just, it sings off the page, quite frankly, because it's how you use the technology with the human element in a really targeted and thoughtful way. The question always becomes, just because we can with AI, should we? We take that to heart a lot, especially with our rare disease patient states, but this was an incredible story and they were very happy, as
Awesome.
were we.
I love that story. Okay, who wants to go next with this story? Christine?
I'm happy to piggyback off of that. A lot of us here in this panel actually work in healthcare,
Yeah.
so you're going to hear some repeating themes here. But we also used Resonate to create segments for a disease state audience. So again, due to regulatory and HIPAA compliance, there's only so many ways that I can reach these people. So this is where something like Resonate is really compelling to me, where I can distill that audience down to who they are beyond their disease. So it's about understanding their not only their demographics and their media habits, but also their psychographics. What are their values? What actually makes them tick? What's actually going to resonate with that audience in terms of your media channels, your contextual selection, where you show up, and including your creative. So one of the things we found was an insight of that one of our segments was very, very family focused. She basically, all of her hobbies were centered around family. All of her values were centered around her family. So one of the things we did was, in addition to our media strategy, we were able to update our creative and serve that creative against that audience. And a lot of times in pharma, what you'll see, or in healthcare, what you'll see is, an image of a doctor talking to a patient, or an image of someone enjoying a hobby like gardening or running. But we used images of consumers with their families. And what we found was a high success rate. Again, bananas jumped off the page. So in a 3-month media sprint, we saw a 15% lift in intent to use. We saw a 20% lift in site visits and a 25% lift in patient inquiries.
Awesome statistics. It's using technology to tap into the human element, to get to the closest as we can, to get to one-on-one and measure it, all right, and measure it. Okay, Marianne, how about your story?
Yeah, so just 2 quick stories. So one is I will say that I never do a new business pitch without Resonate data in it. And we use the data to create those personas. It feeds our creative, it feeds our media and our activation plans. And often, again, for rare diseases or niche populations, we create custom audiences. And I'll say we won the last pitch, so it works. The other example I can give you is a current client we have, and this is consumer durable goods. And we used Resonate audiences and lookalike audiences, which will become predictive modeling in the future, for our targeting. And by using those audiences over a period of 6 months, and this was a social media e-commerce campaign, we were able to reduce the cost per purchase by 50%. So those are, really spectacular results.
Yeah, that's a big 50%, 50.
50%.
That's amazing. You can't tell us who it is, though.
I can't.
Darn it. Okay. All right. How about twofer? Who's got another story they want to tell? Otherwise, I have 2 more questions I want to ask you guys. Some more stories you want to tell? Lynn, I know you always have stories you want to tell.
I always have stories. I would echo actually something that I don't think we've talked about yet here today is that along with the psychographics and the values and everything, leading into a content strategy is something that we often use the tool for to tell stories, because either the client doesn't have it or the brand doesn't have it or they don't have time to do it, but our research department can help be an extension of that team and really use the data. Theme of the day here, like data-driven decisions are the way to go instead of just finger in the air, like hope it sticks. Kind of thing. So the content strategy plans that we're able to come up with and develop in a test and learn kind of way, and just continue to feed it through new insights, refreshing the audiences, because they do change, is something that we've excelled at.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I know, I think content strategy is it isn't something we talk about all the time, but a really, really important part of the facilitating the journey and making sure that it's a good, solid customer experience that lasts through the whole life cycle. I love it. Okay. Anyone else's stories? Okay, let's talk about innovation, because you're all really giving us great examples of where you're continuing to innovate. So how do you ensure that your teams are innovating? And maybe even on the same line of team, how do you work across the organization to really share that, to push people into some of the things that you're doing? Corinne, you want to start with that one?
Sure. So with AI specifically, I think there's a couple different pushes from most people's organizations, right? You say it, you use that in a word and something will get funded. I think a lot of us are being pressured to use Copilot a lot more, which is really just like a sassy Clippy to me. Like at this point, like I can't extract the value that I think I'm supposed to be extracting from there.
Does anyone remember Clippy?
Yep.
Do you guys remember? Okay. That's just, I'm with you.
Yeah, good. All right, sorry. So I think when it comes to innovation and using AI, the one thing that's really, really hard for research people is the unpredictability of what we're generating when we're talking about generative AI, when we're talking about machine learning and the deep learning. Like we're all okay with that. We all like that. We all like models that get smarter. But when it comes to Gen AI, as a research team, they're struggling probably more than anyone else because it's just how do we make sense of this in an area where we need certainty. So what I'm pushing my team to do is to try to use it for areas in which uncertainty is the feature, not the bug. So if you use it like a slightly crazy creative assistant, like is that something that will help you not necessarily come up with insights that are repeatable and solid and you know where that is going, but can you use it for crazy iterations, like making the next Big Mac index or crazy basket of CPI things that someone had some creativity in, and now it's a solid statistical model that people follow. So that's where we're really struggling right now, but using it, pivoting the thinking as a creative assistant and using AI, Gen AI in research.
I like the idea of using it for creativity because I feel like we always think of AI as an accelerator. It's going to make all of our jobs easier. You're going to take all this data and put it into the AI machine. It's going to spit out insights for you. But it's not just about that. It's about this creative aspect. And what we've done at our agency is when we've had brainstorms, a lot of times we'll take those ideas and feed them into AI, and that'll generate more ideas for us. Are they always the greatest ideas? Maybe not. They might be a little pie in the sky, but it's a thought starter. It's something to spark some thinking that can come from that. And I do think, again, like just kind of marrying the acceleration and the creativity is really where AI is going to open up a lot of doors in the future.
That's a great example. Lynn?
Yeah, I love that example, and we do similar things. I think innovation-wise, my team will tell you that I hate the word assume, so we don't assume anything. We don't, just say we've always done it that way before. Those are death knells to me. So it's really constantly just pushing ourselves, questioning ourselves, being like a reflective devil's advocate, just because we can, should we, how are we using this in an ethical way? I mentioned my company is a B Corp. I actually happen to lead that charge also, so the dark side of AI is on my mind a lot also because it is fantastic, it's great, the creativity intersection with acceleration is going to be amazing, but there's other things to also think about in the greater world and making sure that we are not destroying our world. So, but innovation-wise, I think, we come up with some of our best ideas through the acceleration of getting there faster and finding those little nuggets of truth that we can use to create a test and learn strategy to really drive transformational business outcomes.
I think your point about finding the nuggets, and it actually ties to everything you said. It's hard when you have like legacy research or right, and you're trying to say that conventional way of doing things, yes, it's good, but there's new ways, right? And it's finding those nuggets that you almost don't believe will be there.
Yeah.
Like I wouldn't have even thought to look in that set of attributes or that category of 1,000 that's going to be interesting to my audience, but then you find that it is, and now you're open to like trying more. So I think it's it's a good dabbling and pushing and asking good questions, great examples. How about innovation for you?
Sure, I think that the big area for innovation is Gen AI. So one of the things that I'm doing at IMRI is I'm leading a task force that includes people from every department. So it's small, it's nimble, and we can get things done. But we have some people from media, from omnichannel, from creative, from account services, and we're developing sort of pilot use cases across every department, and then preparing to take that out to continue to educate our clients, because some clients are still afraid of it. But to your point too, like these are all the beneficial ways that you can use AI responsibly. And it is everything that you said. It is getting things done faster, getting things done more efficiently, but it's also the creative aspects and finding those nuggets. and getting to better results and getting to better accuracy with models. That's where I think our innovation is really being driven right now across our agency.
And it's such a great example of working across the organization, but also being led from a researcher and insights or an analytics team. Like it's a great unifying kind of force. So, all right, last question, and then we'll take a break. So one more question. If you had to make a prediction, what's your prediction for the future of where AI is going to take marketers?
I'm a big believer in Gen AI. On the one hand, you can say that in its infancy. On the other hand, when you take a look at companies that are already adopting it, it's pretty broad. And just maybe a year ago, the whole conversation on the internet was about prompt engineering, and now it's about all of these use cases and companies that have developed their own products using Gen AI that we can take advantage of rather than building it ourselves. So again, looking at where was social media, where was the internet when it first began, and look at the exponential growth of those technologies, I think it's Gen AI.
Awesome. Lynn?
Yeah, it's such an interesting question to noodle on, because I think, we were talking before this about, 2007, 2008, social media and your clients, like kind of dragging them along there. And that's where AI is today. And also AI has been around for actually a long time, but it's now hit its stride this year. It's like it's hitting its stride kind of a thing. So the future of it is that if you do not embrace it in a way and just make sure you're using it ethically and responsibly and for good, you will be left behind, quite frankly. And so I think we'll always ask companies, I think you and I were talking about this possibly, I don't remember, but we actually see it come up in RFPs sometimes,
Yes.
To the point of either, I didn't experience this yet, but like if you use AI, you're out, kind of a thing, which is dramatic because people are just going to lie to you, honestly. But it's a, how do you use it? So that's kind of the question that we often get in RFPs is how are you using it? Because they want to know that you are using it, honestly, how you're using it, again, in an ethical, responsible way and to better their business outcomes, and that you have experience doing it. So it's here to stay.
It's almost an important shift just from are you using it, that's bad, to are you using it, that's good, but we want to know how so we can understand. Yeah,
exactly. We just want to know how.
I mean, you often have to educate your clients, which I think is a great,
yeah.
It's a really big challenge. Okay.
I feel like there's much better people than me to answer on the research side where AI is going to go, but from the advertising, media, and content side,
for marketers.
I see huge changes as far as media buying and planning. That's already fundamentally changed. Do we even need a human in a loop? I mean, I have a team of planners. I can't even say yes, like in the future. But from the biggest change for me is on the media content side. So like you will have no problem making 100 pieces of that creative because it's going to cost nothing. And Sora's already there for you doing that video production. And then on the media content itself, like how do we have this content arms race of here's a showrunner and we're Hollywood and we can produce 10,000 shows a year. It's like, all right, well, here I am on YouTube and TikTok and I did that in the last minute. So I think that democratizing that with AI from the production side, not only for us as advertisers who can make ads 10 times cheaper than we ever could, 100 times cheaper than we ever could before, but the entire media ecosystem completely changing to the point where like, I don't think in the future it's unreasonable if I'm a high value enough customer that you couldn't just make a movie that only my weirdo taste would like and fill it with a couple ad pods just for me. Like that value equation and that cost might actually work out. I could see that working in 3 to 5 years. So maybe even less than that. So I think it's got huge implications for advertising as far as content production goes.
That was a Black Mirror episode.
I was going to say.
Personal movie.
Fantastic story of meat. Just for you.
No, but look, I have to say that, like everyone else said here, we kind of have to evolve or die, right? And the companies that are going to be the most successful, the brands that are the most successful are the ones that embrace AI And I don't think any of our jobs are going to become obsolete, let's hope, knock on wood, but I do think that our jobs are going to change and evolve, and the roles are going to change. And instead of looking for, someone who can sit there and do Excel sheets, we're going to be recruiting for people who are great at prompting, for example. I think we're always still going to need that human element, as we've all talked about, someone to sit on top of everything and actually enact strategy. So I am very excited about the future and the fact that all of this is going to free us up to do more kind of the fun stuff, strategy, client liaising, that kind of thing. So I'm excited.
Yeah, I love it. The future is bright. Perfect time to wrap it up. Guys, thank you so much. Big round of applause for the panel here. You guys are awesome. Thank you.